Hello. Um, Welcome, Dr. Seun Kolade and Barrister Timi Olagunju. Can you both hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes,
Dr.
I can.
Yeah, okay, great. Just to be sure, I can't see both your videos. That's fine. That's no problem. But just to let you know, in case you don't know, your video isn't on. Okay, so this is pretty much back end things like we did yesterday, Dr. Sheryl and Barrister Timi. So I'll give you like a preview of some of the things I'll be discussing. And heads up, you both are quite political people, so it's going to be more like it's a hardliner right now. So I'll be doing some very serious questions. I think I'll start with the usual. Everyone has been complaining about IREV, right? I've discussed it this afternoon, but I'm going to discuss it from quite a different point of view now. And that's, from a quite political point of view, the Labour Party has raised an issue in Rivers, right? 5 local governments. So we want to see whether that's substantial enough and why it's the only party raising an issue with, system problems. What impact might that have on how people perceive the credibility of the elections? I think that's one point of view to look at it from. And the second thing is what I have termed regionality, not necessarily tribalism. I'm trying to be careful with the words I use here. In the voting patterns, and we see that happen. APC is taking a lead in Southwest. Somehow LP is taking Southeast from results coming in so far. We're seeing a very strong, PDP appeal in the Northeast. Of course, there are mixes in between in places where people could be neutral, for instance, in the North Central. But again, just to sort of examine this more closely, what's driving this and why might people be voting, regionally? So I'm just going to go live now if you are both comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go live.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just a second. Just a second. Okay. We're live. I think just one more second. I think the system is quite slow this time. Oh. Just some usual tech issues. I don't know why it's not going live.
It seems you're already live on Facebook.
No, it's not going yet. I don't know why. It just seems to be showing that from this end, but it's not on the back end. It's not live yet.
I think you're live. We got a notification effect that you're live.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think you probably should just carry on. I think you are live. Let me just see if I can find the Dataphyte. You are live. I can see you live actually.
Okay. It's just this. It's an error. Okay, as I'll just go straight into it. Thank you so much for joining once again, our viewers. If you are joining us, we have with us again Barrister Timi Olagunju, who is a tech lawyer, a policy analyst with over a decade experience in public policy and political issues in Nigeria. I also have with me Dr. Seun Kolade, who is a senior lecturer, I believe. I'm not mixing this up, in business management.
Associate professor.
Associate professor. Yeah. Apologies for that again.
That's right.
So you are both political, at least in my own view. So I'm going to be, posing some quite difficult questions to you. Timi, let's start with you. So far, at least, we've seen the PDP also raise complaints about the political process, but it seems to me that LP has been the most disgruntled, party so far. What do you why do you think this is happening? And do you think maybe the party is less likely to believe in the credibility of the elections compared to the other three dominant parties?
I think that the other party, the PDP, right, candidate has also raised issues as regards the IREV, the platform for uploading results, and has requested that the results be uploaded as quick as possible. So I think those two parties have been quite vocal
Right.
In that sense of speaking out to the issues. Yes.
But I think more specifically though, the Labour Party has asked the chairman. I mean, this afternoon, Abiri was saying, look, there are 5 local governments with issues I mean, this is a quite different thing. This is about, you know, the ballot box snatching and all of that. In Rivers, 5 local governments asking for the elections to be cancelled. Do you think there's something peculiar with that?
Oh, apparently, I've tried to follow the elections across the country, and the feelers, so the feedback has been that there are situations of voter intimidation and inducements in certain places. For example, you know, Rivers State and the likes, including Lagos. In some sense, there are cases also in Bayelsa and a few. Interestingly, one of the state residents, INEC official was quite truthful enough, I think, of Yola to state that there were pockets of such incidents also. You know, the media, we didn't really have those things, you know, reported sort of from the north, but he attested to the fact that there were pockets of that in states, in Yola State, which led to certain results being cancelled in that sense. So I think that to a large extent, that has been a core issue. But most importantly, across board, there has also been a certain ineptitude or a lack of training on the part of INEC officials who are supposed to man the polling unit. For example, people have complained about the fact that the INEC officials do not even know the password in which to upload, you know, the what's it called, the Form EC8A, that's the result form. But even most importantly, I think, lastly, is the fact that integrity is the correspondence of words with action. And the INEC chairman has his integrity in question in the sense of 2 ways. Firstly, he made certain promises, one of which is that results will be automatically uploaded, right? Till we speak, we've not had 50% of results uploaded across the country, right? So that in itself, his words has fallen flat on his face because those stuff should have been uploaded. So whatever excuse after the fact are only political statements and jargons. It's already imputes on the integrity of an independent body in a critical time as this.
Right.
So that's a challenge.
Right. I guess before moving to Dr. Seun Kolade, I'll pose the same question I posed to Victor Agboga, one of our guests earlier. Do you think we are back to, I would say, the less democratic days? Are we back to the 1999, 2003 days when, you know, elections in Nigeria where anything goes? Or do you think that's so far?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the truth about it is, this is what I know, right? The electoral process, the process of collecting results has been quite slower than it was in the last election. By the last election, you know, TV stations were already giving us, you know, projection of the election results and the likes and all that. But in this case, now, it seems that INEC took the entire depository of what the results should be into its hands and is now releasing it bit by bit, like a parent or a guardian that is releasing biscuits to a little child, you know. So that process is quite slow and similarly tedious. It seems to me that INEC has completely eroded the idea of, you know, the results being uploaded and has reverted back to the more manual approach that it used in 2019 and 2015 election, and has become even slower in that process of collecting results.
Right.
And so that itself, you know, because you see, time is key in the essence of results for elections, right? Time. And the time frame between the fact that a lot of results were not uploaded when the INEC of the chairman promised that they will be uploaded, because of excuse like the fact that they're calling their senior officers and they cannot get a password. It shows a lot of possible, not just error, human error, but possible collusion in that sense, particularly when you have such things widespread. So I think we're getting back even worse than the days of worse than the days of 2015 and 2019, but not as worse as the days of 99.
Okay, I see. Okay, thanks for that. I'll come back to you in a bit. Let me get to Dr. Kolade. I've said quite a while. I believe you're a politician yourself. Do you think the voting so far has reinforced the idea of regionality? Now, I'm quite careful with my choice of words, but I also think, and I think this is the view with you find it among political scientists as well. The African system is designed in such a way that people vote along the line of kinsmen, even the most educated people. Do you think the voting so far in Nigeria has been that way? And if that's the case, is that necessarily a bad thing? I think you're muted, sir.
Sorry, I'm muted. Sorry. Thank you again, Maximus, and it's good to be with you, Barrister Olagunju. I mean, I'm not a politician. First, a disclaimer there. Of course, we are all political to a certain extent.
Right.
I think fundamentally is the optics that doesn't look good. You know, the optics of uploading the delay, you know, doesn't look good. It raises fundamental questions about the integrity and credibility of the entire process. Now, I mean, it is possible that, you know, because of the volume, the sheer volume of entries that needed to be made on the server, it is possible that this is, you know, just a purely technical problem that can happen if you have a very severe load, and it's difficult to simulate that, you know, in kind of preparation towards election, because you cannot really practice with the kind of intensity and the volume that you need at any one time, you know, uploading, you know, result concurrently. So maybe that is something actually that INEC need to, you know, take forward in terms of how do you actually ensure that you have the capacity, you know, in terms of when you have, you know, about 170,000 polling units, you know, and you have to upload results, you know, that can be quite daunting. But that is just me playing the devil's advocate there, because part of what we saw on television yesterday were instances where the result of the House of Representatives was uploaded, the result of the Senate was uploaded, and then just moments after that, when it's time to upload the result of the presidential election, then the server goes down. Now, that raises, you know, a lot of questions that you cannot then just put down to, okay, it's a technical server problem. Because why is it that, you know, the same officer uploaded, you know, 2 results in sequence, and then just moment after that, they are struggling with the presidential results? So that did happen yesterday on television. I was following it. So I mean, I think there is a lot of issues there. But I think let's not close our eyes to the technical, you know, problem that could have arisen. But all of that just, you know, raises question that is difficult, or that are difficult for INEC to just gloss over. Because if it's taking you more than 24 hours to upload results, then that's a problem. That's a big problem. Now, to your question as to whether, you know, people, the regional, you know, aspect, I mean, let's face it, it's not, I mean, politics can be very tribal. I mean, we've seen, you know, gridlock in the United States among Republicans and Democrats, you know, going at each other, and even, you know, in the Congress, you know, they can't get things done sometimes. So politics can be quite tribal. But I think 2 comments I will make, and I'll pause for a moment, is the fact that Nigeria is divided as never before. I mean, we always knew there are divisions, but this is heightened as never before. And to a certain extent, you know, I think the current government bears a lot of responsibility. When you have, you know, a dot nation mentality and rhetoric, you are going to have the kind of reactions, the kind of what you have seen. You know, I mean, it's also about the way, leaders conduct and communicate and articulate themselves, that can either calm frayed nerves or escalate issues.
Right.
So there are already simmering tensions, that have been gathering, over the past few years. Are not helped at all by the rhetoric coming from, President Buhari on several occasions. I mean, there are, tensions and anger, frustration gathering from the NSAS, which we must remember was put down by naked violence, under the command of this administration. And those are not accounted for. The dead are not accounted for. So you see a whole range of things. And of course, there are regional specific issues, not least in the East, especially if, the Southeast has never produced a president of the Republic. And there are, simmering, dissatisfaction and tension. So all of that, of course, will come into play. But that's the reality. The country is divided. So I'm not surprised to see, some of the profile and the patterns of voting. But also it must be acknowledged that, voter intimidation happened, in part of Southwest. It did happen in part of Southeast as well. As it did, in part of the North. So it's not been exclusive to any party. But I think if you are a Labour supporter, you are going to feel, a bit more hard done by because of the way things have panned out, especially when again, about the way, the problem with the uploading. So is the presidential result that have had, particular problems. So, and I think INEC cannot just wash his hand off of that.
Right. Excellent. Thanks a lot for that. Maybe one more specific question, just thinking along this line of, regional voting and all of that. So far.
There's one other point I wanted to make before I forget.
Okay, all right.
And I will not stay long on it, but I think it's really important. Okay. And I think that is the fact that all of this is exposing a fundamental flaw with the Nigerian system.
Yeah.
Presidential democracy is not fit for purpose in Nigeria. It is expensive. It is very, very high stake, because the president just wield, unusual, power that is not, you almost feel is not democratic, in the Nigerian situation. And then the process of electioneering itself, where, you have to count these millions of votes across, how many local governments, 770 something of them.
Right.
I don't think it's fit for purpose. It's too expensive. You need a parliamentary system that devolves this to, if you get, the sanction of the acceptance of your local population, then come to the centers and let the representative across all of these, constituencies, even if there's 1,000 of them, let them then come together and then elect among themselves who is going to be the leader of government.
Well, I think you make a very good argument there, sir. But I mean, but I think
I'll leave that for now.
Yeah, because I think there's also a concern of the problem with executive implementation. So if you have like a government that's heavily parliamentary, and the problem with the Nigerian state is that the sense of civil service is weak in itself, which is why you need a sort of like handy, powerful central government in a way that sort of commands that respect. And if you have a state where people are mostly like a bicycle and the civil service is weak, so running things in a parliamentary way might, give some, problems with executive implementation of policies. I wouldn't know what your take is on that.
No, I mean, but it's then, a very roundabout way of fixing the problem. So if the problem is with the civil service, then you are not going to fix it by covering it up. We don't need a nanny state, that has, a very central, executive, arm of government that is doing everything. We have seen now and again, if it wasn't clear before in the First and Second Republic, we have seen since 1999, 24 years of experiment, that this does not work. This cannot work. That is why large swaths of land of places in the north are outside of the control of the federal government.
Mm.
Because it's just really not impossible. It doesn't really just work for somebody to sit there at the center and control everything. For the police to be there, at the center, and they're, issuing instruction for what is happening in Oyo or in Ekiti or in some remote places. It doesn't work. You have to devolve power in a multi-ethnic, multicultural, very diverse country like Nigeria. The last thing you need is a central authority, that is, nannying, everybody else. It cannot work. And the evidence is there, it's palpable. Things are worse now than they were before, because you didn't have non-state actors taking large swaths of land. In the Northwest, bandits are now taking taxes. They are taxing, they are collecting taxes from farmers, right? Yeah. So it cannot work. We have already seen, the evidence, I think is incontrovertible in my view.
Right.
That okay, the civil service is weak, but you need to find a way to fix it by actually empowering communities to begin to fix it, not actually, doing the nanny on them, because it's just not working. And you've seen that also. The Southeast now. You have again non-state actors actually taking control, stopping, economic activities, and in ways that the state powers can do little about. And in Southwest, you're beginning to see, certain, movement also in the direction of loss of control with kidnappers and and what is happening among farmers and herdsmen and so on. We can go on and on. It will be interesting to hear what Barrister Olagunju thinks about this. But I think while we talk about all of this, we need to go back and look at the roots and actually what is happening and what has become intractable and is getting on the worse by the day.
Right. Timi, let's go back to you then. Just starting off from the first point, which was this sense of regional voting. Do you think that's happening, and do you think that's probably a good thing for us?
I think I like Professor Kolade's perspective as to core institutional restructuring. Very important, and I like to say, if the foundation be destroyed, what can the makeup artists do and put powder? And so we have a powder state of things. And taking off from there, you realize that that same powdered state of things is what is reflecting on our perception of what things are. Look, our deductions about regional elections are not entirely true, right? Have we really had free and fair elections? That's the key. Those are key questions to ask. Right. For example, so we cannot deduce rightness from wrongness. It's not possible. Minus times plus will give us minus. We'll always come with the negative deductions. And so, for example, look at issues of inducements in Lagos and issues of voter suppression with evidence to show these things. So can we really say that the results there reflects the voting population, or reflects the true state of the mind of the Nigerian? I think that the political culture and politicians, particularly those who are keen on taking on power for the sake of power, have so much shaped the narrative by virtue of their own actions and inactions, such that we then begin to take conversations out of this thing. I do not really think that Nigeria is divided across regional lines in the sense of the reflection of the choice of leadership as well. I do not think it is. For example, look at what's happening. Leave the baby boomers. The baby boomers are in the world of their own, but they don't constitute more than 20% or 25% of the population. Right? Those who, millennials and Gen Zs, have you seen how millennials and Gen Zs even interact amongst themselves? Look at what happened with the NSAS. When Christians were there protecting Muslims to pray, and Muslims were, joining Christians to actually pray. You see that is the true state of what the reflection of Nigeria. But you see, what you promote is what becomes popular, right? So over time, we've promoted conversations around those primordial deductions that the political space have constituted as a result of their own actions and inactions, but it does not reflect the true state of the Nigerian state or the true state of Nigerians. And so that's very important.
Right. Well, I think maybe just to pick on that, one question I'd been itching to ask you both, and I think I've asked Dr. Kolade this earlier, but I'll just ask it in a different way. Timi, do you think there's sort of a stark difference between social media and reality? Because then it looked to me as if you went online, if everyone, it was like Peter Obi was winning everywhere. And I'm a data analyst as well. We've worked with data. Many of the data I've put in my head. Without bias to some of the other factors that might be influencing the elections now. We did feel like people wanted Peter Obi to an extent, but the reality seems to be quite the opposite on the ground. I know as Labour Party supporter, you might not want to agree with that at least yet. But do you think there's a stark difference between political behavior, especially for Nigerians, online and the way people have reacted with these elections, not just in voting, but in also some of the attitudes you're seeing offline? It's the same voters that snatching ballot boxes, intimidating their fellow voters at the poll.
Well, interestingly, you see those people snatching ballot boxes are not the same voters as you and I. Let's be frank.
Right.
They are people, like Machiavelli said, there's nothing more difficult to do or more doubtful of success than to initiate a new order of things. For the lukewarm defenders are those who profit by the old order, right? There's a certain order, it's the old order. They think they profit by that order, right? Just even who are snatching ballot boxes, let's be frank. In the course of snatching ballot boxes, are they able to even vote?
Right.
You see, so. In other words, they are part of the old order and machinations of the old order. Now, when it comes to social media reflection, look, this election or whatever results are out of this election, I can say that without an inch of it is easy to cast doubts on the integrity of INEC itself in this election. Firstly, from the INEC chairman, it's simple. Integrity is the correspondence of words with action. You've made certain promises. You've had time to test these things. I've read several reports by different organizations to the effect of some of the things that happened today.
Right.
Were already projected to happen. For example, people raised issues, and I mean both organizations like Dataphyte and the likes raised issues of training of officials.
Right.
Months before election, people raised issues about the motion data. What is the guarantee that we will be able to transmit the data from point A to point B?
Right.
So it is not as if these things are emergency issues that came up in project management. You realize that this is a failure.
Right.
When you look at it from the project manager, because these are not exigencies, not at all. INEC should not come and tell us these are not exigencies.
Right.
These are not things that came up as part of no, these are things that had been anticipated, of which INEC gave us the word that it has been sorted with.
Right.
So you see that how can a polling unit officer, right, not have the password in this age and time when you can put the password in a sealed whatever and give it to the polling officer or whatever it is, and the polling officer, whatever it is, can say, okay, herein, ladies and gentlemen, I want to upload, It was on the polling station that some people discovered that you don't even need internet to upload results. You can go to offline mode and still upload results.
Right.
It was there. Voters were the ones teaching NEC officials. So it tells you that to a large extent, you see, whatever deductions we want to make, we cannot make accurate deductions from a foundation that is faulty. The foundation of the elections
We lost them.
I think we lost.
Itself
Yeah, okay.
is faulty right?
We lost you there,
So,
but I think you're back now.
okay, yes, please. Conversation enriches the understanding. There are certain proactive statements that the INEC of chairman or the Mr. Barrister Festus, the INEC voter education should have made. For instance, when issues of the beavers, when you see that, okay, as at yesterday, the results were not uploaded, they should have raised the issues and not give us flimsy excuse, medicine after whatever. It doesn't work that way. So please, we can't make any reasonable deductions from if the foundation of a faulty process. We can't.
Right.
We can't. I just await what the international community, will say as regards this election, and including data.
Yeah, interestingly, you just mentioned that, because the next question I was actually going to ask Dr. Seun Kolade is to take an international perspective to this. So in research, I work a little bit on international election observation, and what you usually find in cases like this, the EU mission is currently in Nigeria, Commonwealth Guild of observers are here, several international missions are here, ECOWAS is here, AU is here, and they try to absolve themselves from this kind of issues to say whether that kind of cast out on the electoral management body. But by and large, Dr. Seun, do you think the international community can still maintain its trust in Nigeria's electoral process, or do you think things might have changed as a result of these elections?
I mean, to be honest, I've not been, following up on what the international observers are saying.
Right.
But quite frankly, I don't think it's is really as important as what we see before us as Nigerians, both at home and the diaspora. I think that is weightier, really, about the perception of citizens, ordinary citizens, on social media or otherwise, about the integrity of the process. And I think there's a cloud there, that is hanging over INEC. Yeah. And whether or not the international observers say, oh, this is good or it's not good, I wouldn't put too much weight on that, really. And I think it's high time also we, as Nigerians, sort of weaned ourselves from assigning any special weight of credibility to what international observers are saying. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I'm saying, it's not nearly as important as what the ordinary folk up and down the street are saying. I mean, if you have elections, in the UK, as you are aware, Maximus, or in the US, there is not a lot of weight given to, observers, I mean, we don't even hear much about observers, right? So it's only when you have elections in African countries, we have, special slots, to discuss, what the view of observers is. And I mean, I can understand that a bit because, the democratic process is still, in process of development. But I think what is really, really concerning is the cloud that is manifestly raising, fundamental questions about integrity of the process, and that, INEC has not responded well to. I mean, we can give allowance for technical, problems, but what is the level of preparedness? So there is the issue that has been raised about, password. Well, presumably somebody can just be giving that password anywhere and upload a different result, right? So if you need to be giving password, they could give password to somebody else, who is in a different location, and they will upload a different result there and then. So what is then the point of people waiting? I mean, somebody waited for 11 hours in Abuja yesterday and had to leave her polling unit because she couldn't vote after waiting for so long. Towards the point of all that exertion and commitment from citizens, if the uploading process then become complicated. But back to your question, I think I'll be surprised if any, and you tell us, I'll be surprised if we hear of any of the international observers or group of observers going to town with high-sounding praise for INEC, under the circumstances. If they do, I mean, I think, it doesn't carry any weight at all, in my view.
Right, right. Maybe I toss this back to Timi. Do you think the level of citizens' enthusiasm can be sustained then? Because I mean, I understand that people would have doubts, people would have issues with INEC, but I still believe that a large proportion of Nigerians are quite political. So when results come out either ways, if it favors their party, it seems like all sins are forgiven. So do you think that sense of enthusiasm and belief, strong belief in a democratic process could be sustained when the results are eventually out?
That would be a difficult one to assess. But frankly speaking, amongst the demographic of people who voted for Labour Party, we find a lot of the demographic of first-time voters, right, who are not used to the shock that comes with elections that is not just seen to be done fairly, but that is seen to have a process that it can be faulted. So that shock itself is enough to drive those categories of voters mad.
Right.
I am aware that the police has started issuing out warnings that anybody that protests is going to face the wrath of whatever. But I think that it seems like a well thought out and planned scheme to get everybody to get quiet. But you see what happens with the NSAS protests, right? It seemed like the protest died down, but then certain people shaped the narrative.
Right.
And look, it is not enough to protest. You must show your protest by voting. And that narrative was a key one that keyed into the emergence of a third force.
Right.
Right. So it all culminated. Now, what will shape whether people are going to be disgusted about it or whether people are going to brace up and come bigger will be dependent on the narrative that flows from key players in the political process and key opinion leaders. Right? That itself will shape whatever narrative. If the narrative has to a certain discourse and it need to act now, that will be what might happen. And that can also shape the need, the act of giving up. But if the narrative is, look, let's keep pushing. This is a democracy. The journey of a million miles starts with a decision and a step. That's kind of narrative. That can also shape, but that will not stop a massive exodus of young Nigerians that are, japa out of the country. I think perhaps we might start to look at the issue of migration and the election and the connectivity of both. Because if the election results and the process does not reflect the expectations, there's a difference between losing an election and an election that you felt that you lost because of certain, loopholes here and there. That itself, the second part of it, can create a certain dismay, a certain loss of the identity as Nigerians. And a lot of people that believe in this election, not just even Nigerians. I've seen Ghanaian friends, Liberians, South Africans rooting for Nigeria in this election, right? So the best INEC should have done, it does a job once every 4 years, could have been to do a good job. But in that sense, if the job shows that it's poorly done, the reflection on that will be some disgust and some intention to actually leave the country for a long time. And before we might be able to get this back, that might take a decade or more. Remember the 1992-93 elections. It took over 30 years or 29 years to get here when there's an increased voter turnout. We keep saying that Nigerians don't come out to vote. But this time, it is not a question of whether Nigerians came out to vote. It's now a question of whether INEC was really ready for the votes of Nigerians. Thank you.
Right. Oh, thanks a lot for that, Barrister Timi. I believe this has been very comprehensive. Perhaps one last question to you both. What do you think of the body language of the top runners in this election? Quite frankly, it's probably too early to judge. Some of them are still very quiet, which I believe is very good for democracy, because anything you say at this point might be misinterpreted and might, have some impact on how your followers behave. But at the same time, I would expect that in a democracy that's sane, and this is not, in any way absolving any of them. We've seen violence in the stronghold of the leader of the APC. We've seen violence in the stronghold of the leader of the LP, to lesser extent in the north. But what do you both have to say about the body language of the leaders? They haven't been very, clear and proactive in saying, hey, guys, whatever happens, don't go to the streets. We know they signed the peace accord about 3 days ago, but that's less consequential as what they actually do while the elections are on. Do you think it's just fine to be quiet?
Well, I think, maybe just a quick one again before coming to this question about what Barrister Olagunju was saying earlier. But I think you have to give credit to the Army of Nigerian Youth, who are part of NSAS protest, which end in very, very, horrific circumstances. The protest itself, but not the spirit of that protest. The spirit of the protest has endured and has, led, this movement to very credible and commendable organization, this time around to participate in the election. So I do hope, for the sake of the country, that spirit persists, that incredible resilience of young Nigerians persists, and recognizing that it is a long game. But you cannot, discountenance the fact that, the credibility of this election will have a big role to play in that. If you have, it's okay to lose. People will not mind to lose elections or for their candidate not to win in a kind of a very transparent and open, credible process. That will only invigorate and energize them for what lies ahead. But a situation where you have a cloud of manipulation and of questions around the credibility, then there is a possibility. But I hope, for the sake of the country, that the Army of Nigerian Youth are not discouraged, that they organize themselves, they persist, they continue.
Right.
But back to your question now about the body language. I think it's too early actually to say at this point. I think you have to, commend, the candidate of the main parties. They have sort of kept quiet at the moment. But I think we need to wait until the many more results start coming in. We remember, many years ago, what President Buhari did say in one of the occasions where he lost the election. Right. And how actually that did set the country on fire, especially in part of the north. So it's good. So let's hope that, this is what continues, that the candidates are not, sort of rabble-rousing or trying to stir their followers to rampage. But I think, we have to wait a bit more to see how this unfolds.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Seun Kolade. Barrister Timi, just to wrap up, do you have anything to say on that?
Oh, well, basically, I must just say clearly that, as the election stands, irrespective of who wins the election, right? By virtue of Section 65 of the Electoral Act, which is the legislation, I think Clause 38 of the election guidelines as well provides that presiding officers must transmit results to INEC result viewing portal on completion of election. Right. Failure to comply is a criminal offense. And then it also talks about the fact that a presiding officer that violates is liable to 500,000 imprisonment for not less than 6 months. Now, given the substantial nationwide failure of presiding officers to transmit results to INEC result viewing portals as mandated by legislation, law, there can be basis for, due to that contravention, there can be basis for legal suits against INEC to the effect of the cancellation of this particular election and the request for a rerun, irrespective of who wins the election. These are legal. When you even check section 134 thereabout, you will see that non-compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act is a ground for challenging an election.
Right.
And so there will be a lot of pockets of legal suits, and it will become the case of the enemy of my enemy is now my friend.
Oh, yes.
But apparently we're on a long walk to freedom. Welcome Nigerians to that walk.
Thank you both for that. And on that note, we'll be ending our commentary today. I'll just begin on Barrister Timi's line. It's a long walk, Nigerians. I believe we have at least 2 days more before we know officially who is winning the elections. If you look at Dataphyte analysis, we've seen that in the last 3-4 cycles of elections, averagely the results have taken like 3 to 4 days after voting before they come out. So people relax, wait for official results from INEC. But at the same time, Dataphyte is bringing you updates from our analysts in 774 local governments. So you can check our data portal, elections.dataphyte.com, to get live update of the results. Caveat though, INEC has the final say. Thank you so much, Barrister Timi and Dr. Seun Kolade, for coming. See you later.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye.
Bye.